Good evening, folks. My name is Xander Townend. I'm one of the counselors who works with Love with Boundaries, and I'm going to be acting as your technical host here. I'm going to be helping Candace with feeding her the questions that people don't want to ask themselves, that they put in the chat. And I'm going to welcome you to, at any point, to ask a question using the chat function. Now, I'll ask, is there anybody here who is not familiar enough with Zoom that you don't, is there anybody here who doesn't know how to use chat inside Zoom? Can you please put up your hand? Okay, cool, thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
No worries, it'll be a review for everybody else.
So at the bottom of your screen, usually, unless you're maybe on some device that I don't know how it does Zoom, but there's a little sort of thought bubble like you'll see in cartoons, and it says chat underneath it. You can click on that and it will open up a little sidebar where there is an opportunity for you to chat to everyone. And I encourage you to chat to everyone or to direct a chat to me. And you'll find my list on the list of participants. And if you want to submit a question, you can do that while Candace is talking, if you wish, or after she's finished. So what's going to happen is I'm going to be doing this little orientation, and then I'll introduce Candace, and she will talk for a while. And when she's finished talking, then it'll be an opportunity for anybody to raise their hand and say, I'd like to ask a question. And I'm going to suggest that you raise your hand by putting a message in the chat saying, I have a question for Candace. And then I will take people in the order in which they submit their questions, and I will call on you to not only appear on video if you're comfortable doing that, but also to unmute yourself so that we can hear your question and so that you can interact directly with Candace. Does anybody have any questions about what I've just shared? Please raise your hand if you do. Seeing no hands, I'm going to think that everybody's good with it. Great. So, for anybody who's just joined us, as I mentioned at the start, my name is Xander Townend. I'm one of the counselors on the Love with Boundaries team, and it's my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you to this webinar presentation with Candace and to the question and answer session. This is the first of 4 that we're planning to do, one each week. If you're a member of Candace's email list, then you will have received an announcement last night, about our second webinar, which is happening next week at the same time. It will be a different link. You will have to use the link that you were provided by Zoom in the email when you registered, just as you did to come on to this webinar and Q&A session here. That webinar will be about self-respect. And so if everybody who has shown up here or registered to show up here will receive an email tomorrow with further details about our next webinar and Q&A session, and with some other information about how you might follow up on what we've talked about and discussed here tonight.
And Xander, will they also get the link for this recording?
Yes,
okay.
That's, I just hadn't quite gotten to saying that yet.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll get a link to the recording as as promised to you in the email when you were invited to show up for this. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers the introduction. We'll be staying online pretty much until the questions are answered, or an hour and 15 minutes has elapsed. And Candace may decide that that's it for her energy, or that she's good for taking any further questions if we decide that we're going to go for 4 hours.
No, that won't happen. No.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So without any further ado, welcome everybody. Thank you for showing up. And Candace is going to now begin her sharing about how to have a happy holiday even if you love an addict.
Hey. Well, hi everyone. I'm so glad that you're all here, and I really am. There are some of you, I was able to get a list earlier today of the participants on the call today, and I recognized some names, which was really neat. Some of you are clients of mine or have been clients, and some of you have emailed me in the past, so I know you a little bit. And for the rest of you, I'm really glad you're here. Welcome to everybody. I don't know how many of you do Zoom calls and maybe do presentations on Zoom calls, but there's this wonderful feature of Zoom that allows you to have your notes so that you can look at your notes while you're giving a presentation. I just love that. I was just saying to Tracy before that I wasn't able to do that on my TEDx talk. I had to memorize everything. So I haven't memorized everything, and I will have my notes up sometimes. So you may see me looking down just to kind of remind me of where I'm going with all of this. So this webinar is going to be basically in 3 different parts. We're going to be talking about, I'll backtrack for a minute, because when I first started thinking about doing this webinar about the holidays, I thought to myself, this is easy. I've definitely given talks about this before. I've written articles about this before, no problem. I've given, advice and suggestions, and this will be just fine. Except it isn't, because it's different, because it's COVID. And that changes things. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about how to be able to have a good holiday, even with that and with an addict in your life. The first part of this call is basically going to be about how things were last year and the year before, and hopefully how they'll be next year. And then we're going to talk about how it is now, how it really is now. And then we'll go into the Q&A. So those are the three kind of distinct parts that I'm going to do with you. I was just looking on CNN before I came on here. I wanted to see what the numbers were before I brought them to you in terms of COVID. And in the United States, there are now 250,000 people dead from COVID. There's over 250,000 people. And in Canada, where I am, it's not nearly as bad, but the numbers are exploding. So it's happening here, it's happening everywhere, and it's something that we really need to talk about. So let's start with how it used to be. Because, in years past, we just took it for granted that, if you're going to celebrate the holidays, as most people want to do, you're either going to go to somebody's house, or you're going to have people over to your place, and you don't even think about it. You think about who you're going to invite. If you're going to have people coming to you, who do you invite? You run that list by your family, see whether everybody's okay with that. You organize who's going to cook what and who's going to bring what. And, maybe you clean your house, which some people I think aren't doing that much of in COVID. But you clean your house, you decorate your house, and you kind of expect to have a good time. You're hoping that you'll have a good time. The thing to understand, and I think most of you do, is that the holiday season is not always a happy time for people. The media likes to present it as this it's the most wonderful time of the year, right? Not everybody feels that way. And I think that the media portrays it that way sometimes for people who don't feel that way to feel even worse, so that they'll spend money on stuff so that they feel better. So if you're in a situation where you're not enjoying the prospect of the holidays very much, and if you have an addicted loved one in your life, that could really be the case for you. Please know that that's more the norm than all these wonderful, happy people you're seeing on television. I think it's really important to remember that. So, the things that we thought about last year, things that we, had our what ifs about, would be, what if you invited too many people and you couldn't fit them all in your space? What if you have an alcoholic Uncle Joe who, he's somebody's brother, and you always invite him every year because he's somebody's brother and he expects to be invited, and he comes and he's tipsy when he gets to your house, and he's drunk throughout the night, and maybe he falls head first into his plate of food. So you're worried about Uncle Joe. And if you have an addicted family member, you're really worried about that. You're worried about whether to invite them. They may live with you, they may not live with you. You may be worried about whether to invite them. What's that going to be like? Are they going to disrupt the family gathering? Some people have addicted loved ones in their lives and don't know where they are. And that's really difficult as well. So, having an addict in your life who's still in active addiction is a really difficult situation. I don't know how many of you know my story, but I do want to tell you just a little bit, because I want you to understand that when I say the word addict, I'm not meaning to be disrespectful to anyone. And, we're talking now about, there's a lot of talk now in the profession about not using the word addict, that it's a shaming word. I am an addict. I am an addict in recovery. I have 33 and a half years clean and sober now. I was an opioid addict for about 15 years, which started with prescriptions that I was given by doctors for my Crohn's disease. They really didn't know what else to do for me, so they gave me all of these addictive, codeine and oxys and Valium, all kinds of things that that my body got addicted to. So when I realized that I was an addict about 15 years later, feeling suicidal and not knowing what was going on for me, when I realized I was addicted and I was an addict, I found that word to be very helpful, because I knew what to do, or at least I knew there was something I could do. And that's when I started my recovery. So I want to let you know that I am an addict. I don't mean to be disrespectful with that word. It's easier than saying somebody with an addiction all the time. And I'm also the loved one of people with addictions, and I know it from all kinds of angles. And I've been working in this field for the past 30 years, working with families that are affected by somebody else's addiction. So that's just a little bit of understanding and knowledge about me if you didn't already have that. So getting back to what I was saying, you know, those are the kinds of things that we worried about last year, and some of them we're still concerned about. We used to know that we could say to Uncle Joe or our son or daughter or, you know, somebody else in our lives who's addicted, that if you cause a ruckus at our celebration, at our family gathering, we will be asking you to leave. We will be taking your car keys and we will call a taxi or an Uber and we will roll you into the car and off you'll go. And that was a good boundary last year. It's not such a good boundary this year because off you go into the land of COVID, especially if you don't have anywhere else to be. So things change, right? But we are going to talk today about boundaries that you can set and the ways to do that in this time, even with what it is that we're dealing with now. So let's get into that. The way it is now, I know that we may have people from different places than North America. I know we've got people from Canada, and I know we've got people from the US, and there may be people from other countries as well on this call. For the people in the United States, what I'm aware of, I follow this pretty closely because I'm a senior with a pre-existing condition who doesn't want to get sick again. So I'm very careful and I follow this. What I know is that in the US, there are now about 45 of the 50 states that have higher rates of COVID every day. Their rates are getting higher every day. Some of this is from super spreader events that have happened recently. And sometimes this happens because, you know, you go to the grocery store, you touch something that somebody else touched, and then you rub your eye. It's just that easy to get. We need to be so careful. In some states, we live in Vancouver, we're above Washington State, and Washington State was one of the first places where COVID broke out. And now, again, it's the cases have risen so high that, you know, the people in Washington and in many other places are being asked not to travel, not to go home, not to potentially get or spread this illness. And what we're all hoping for is that it's only for this year. Now, in Canada, here in BC anyway, I know that it might be different in other provinces, but we're being asked, we're being told basically that we're not to have more than 6 people at a gathering, and those are supposed to be only people that we live with. We're not to be going into each other's homes. So we have a minimum of 6 people. It's supposed to be the bubble. I'm going to talk about a bubble in a minute. And for people who are breaking that here in BC, they're being fined. So you can pay, you know, $2,500 if you're caught with more people than 6 from people outside your family in your home. So this is being taken really seriously. If you're planning to travel, you might want to, wherever you live, you might want to reconsider that for this year. As difficult as that is for people, because you really want to see your family, right? You don't want to be You don't want to be alone for holidays. You don't want to be spreading an illness. You don't want to be getting an illness. It's so difficult now. So I think we're probably going to talk about that a little bit more. I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but I think it's really important to talk about it, because whether you're as serious about this as I am or not, it's still there and it's still serious. So that's what this year is like. So they talk about bubbles, like people have their bubble of other people. And I'm of the belief that we really don't have a bubble except for our very own selves. We are kind of our own bubble. Unless you're with somebody 24/7 and you know exactly where they've been and who they've been in touch with, and then you don't know where they've been and you don't know who they're in touch with, and they come back into your home and who knows, right? So the whole thing about a bubble being a safe thing is not necessarily. It's just something to consider. I know that for me, when I go shopping, I'm wearing a mask or two, like into Safeway. I'm wearing plastic gloves because I don't know who put the lemons on the shelf, and I don't know what they were wearing on their hands when they did that. So I take a lemon, I put it in my cart, and the gloves remind me not to rub my eye, even if I want to. They just remind me not to do that. And then I take them off and throw them out when I'm finished at that store. Now, this is difficult and a lot of people don't do it the same way that I do, but I just wanted to offer that to you as a possibility, especially right now with these cases getting higher and higher. What we're all yearning for is normalcy. We all want this to go away. And many of us, including me, have COVID fatigue, which has become a word. It's a thing. And even if we have COVID fatigue and we don't want to do all the things that we're supposed to do, COVID is still there. So please, please be careful. I want to read a couple of quotes to you about that I found on the internet that I thought were really good. I couldn't see a way to put them in better words, so I thought I would just read it to you. So it says, this year, the common issues of complex family dynamics, grief, and financial stress that are normal during the holidays now intersect with the very real and frightening concern over the safety of self and loved ones. Holiday stress is amplified this year and is even common in those who do not normally experience it. I don't usually experience it, right? In a year filled with a lot of hard decisions, each one of us will be faced with even more in the coming weeks. Perhaps you've been mulling it over and came to the conclusion that it's best not to go home for the holidays this year to avoid putting your family and yourself at risk. And even if you know you're making the right choice, feelings of guilt are bound to creep in. And it's not just feelings of guilt, it's feelings of, I want to be with my family, I want to be with my friends, this yearning, this longing to have things be normal. So if you are feeling that, please know there are like thousands and millions of us who feel exactly that way. And the end of this quote is, remember that this is only for the present. Making these hard decisions now helps ensure a future holiday season, next year we hope, where everyone is safe and well enough to celebrate together. It would feel worse if everyone gathered and then people got sick. So I just really wanted to give you this piece about COVID, and I know you might be sitting there thinking, well, she just stopped talking about this. We keep hearing this on the news, you know. It's just so important. So I felt the need to talk about it. In Canada, I was born in the US and I'm a dual citizen. I grew up in the States, and I'm very used to having Thanksgiving be at the end of November on a Thursday, and then Black Friday is right after that. But in Canada, and it took me a long time to get used to this, Thanksgiving is on a Monday and it's in October. It's usually around October 10th. And so we've already had our Thanksgiving here, but Thanksgiving is coming up, and then Christmas is coming up, and then New Year's is coming up. You know? So let's talk about what, we kind of shift gears here, and we'll talk about if you have an addict in your life who might be at your family celebration, your holiday. So in the past, it's been really easy, well, that's the wrong way to put it. It's been easier for families to be able to say to somebody who's addicted, if you're going to misbehave, if you're not going to follow our boundaries and our expectations, then you're out of here. We're going to ask you to go. It's harder to do that now because of COVID. It's harder. Families don't want to just kick their loved ones out. In fact, a lot of people are allowing their loved ones, especially adult children, you know, to live in the family home. And when they live in the family home, generally, if they're still practicing addicts, they're not contributing very much to the household. They're not paying rent, usually, or not very much. They're not buying food. They're not cooking food. They may not be cleaning up after somebody cooks their meal. They're probably not doing their laundry. They're, you know, if, and again, I should just say that when I talk about addiction in this context, what I'm talking about are mind-altering addictions. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to be addicted to things, and we have mood-altering addictions, which are kind of behaviors like gambling or smoking cigarettes or shopping too much, spending too much money. Those alter our mood, but they don't alter our mind. So I'm talking about the mind-altering addictions that just change people. And you know what I'm talking about. So if you've got an addict in your life who has a mind-altering addiction, basically alcohol or drugs, they're not people you can communicate very well with, and sometimes you can get really afraid of them because they can be violent. They can get very angry. They can respond in really horrible ways. So what do? How do you set a boundary? How do you let the addict that you love know that, hey, this is my house. This is our house. You're a guest in our house. Even if you live here, if you're not paying the rent or the mortgage, you're a guest. And we expect you to go by our boundaries, live up to our expectations. How do you say that to an addict who's using drugs or alcohol? So one of the best ways I know is to do this in what I call a non-charged moment. And there's a wonderful way to do it, which is called the sandwich technique. And those of you who have worked with me, you know what the sandwich technique is because we've worked together with it. So the sandwich technique is basically what it sounds like. It's like if you've got a bologna sandwich, you know, you've got the bread. God, I haven't had bologna in so long. You got the bread, and you've got the bologna, and you've got the bread. So there's 3 parts to the sandwich technique. And the first part is positive. The second part is negative, the critical feedback that you need to give. And then the third part is positive, leaving them wanting more, leaving them feeling okay. So in a non-charged moment, you say to the person with the addiction, hey, have you got just a few minutes? There's something I'd like to talk with you about. And it's even better if there's somebody else in your home, maybe another adult child who isn't an addict, maybe a partner who's supportive, who doesn't rile up and get rageful if the addict gets rageful. Be careful who you choose, but sometimes it's good to have more than one person when you're setting a boundary, because it's a show of unity in your home. So it's not just, I'm not going to put up with this, we're not going to put up with this. So positive, negative, positive. The first part is when you say to the addict that you love, because you do love them, you don't always like him or her, but you love them, and you tell them that, and you say, honey, I love you so much, and I'm glad that you're safe with us here. I'm glad that you're safe with us here. We'd like you to be at our Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas dinner, whatever. We'd like you to be here. But we have some boundaries, and you start going into the critical feedback that you want to give. What we need to make sure of is that you're clean and sober when you come to our table, that you remain that way during the meal. If you absolutely have to use your addiction afterwards, then go ahead, but you need to be in a different place in the house. You need to be in your room or maybe in the basement, but you're not out here with us if you're going to use your addiction. And we expect you to behave yourself. And if you're not able to do that, then we'll be asking you to leave the table and to go back to, whatever your space in the house is. And then you end on that positive note of, and we really love you, and we're really glad you're here, and we want you to be with us. You're part of the family, and we want you to be with us. So that's just an example. It's a very short example of the sandwich technique: positive, negative, positive. If you have a question about that, there's a part of me that wants to ask right now, does anybody have a question? But we'll leave it for afterwards. If you have a question about it, please write it down, and then you can ask during the Q&A. Please be gentle with yourself when you're about to do this. This is not an easy thing to do. This takes a lot of courage. It's like the serenity prayer, the courage to change the things you can, which is you. The courage to do something different that's going to help your addict instead of enable. To allow your addict to get away with bad behavior is not a loving act. It's never a loving act. And people with addictions who are allowed to rule the roost, who are allowed to sleep all day and party all night in your house, who get angry and punch holes in the walls when they feel like it, and are still allowed to live there, this is not a loving act. The most loving thing you can do is set appropriate boundaries and follow through on them. And if you need help with that, that's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for, Xander and the other people on my team who can help you. So we'll talk about that in a little while, but this is not an easy thing to do. So be gentle with yourself and just know that it's not easy, but you're willing to do it so that you can have a decent holiday celebration, and you're setting an appropriate boundary for the addict that you love. So it would be a good idea for you to think about what you're going to say before you sit down with that person. Think about it, maybe talk about it with somebody else who's supportive with you, with a counselor. Think about it, talk about it, and sometimes write it out. And really be prepared. Be as prepared as you can be so that when you sit down with that person, you know what you're going to say, because there's a real good chance that they're going to say F off, right? And you want to be able to say to them, I'm not okay with that. You know, you need to hear what I'm saying to you. So please reach out for help if you need it to be able to do that. It's the best thing you can do. It's the most self-respecting thing that you can do. And the other things that you can do, you know, I mean, if you're really going to be in a bubble with your family of 6 people or less who live with you, then you probably don't need to wear masks, and you may not have to social distance, but you might want to be careful about those things anyway. It's up to you and how you feel about it. You might want to look at different things that you can do for this gathering, for this dinner that you're going to have. I've been seeing, I mean, I'm not a great cook, but I keep getting emails into my inbox about all these wonderful new Thanksgiving recipes or Christmas recipes that people can try. You might want to change things up and make something different. You might want to tell so-and-so to cook this and so-and-so to cook that, and do the same kind of thing that you would do if you were inviting people in, right? To designate and have people help you so that you don't get totally burnt out. And the other thing I've been thinking about is that ritual of gratitude, which is kind of what Thanksgiving is about, but it's also just what mindful daily living is about. So, you know, to be able to set up a ritual where you go around to each person and they talk about what they're grateful for that day, that month. You know, who are they grateful for? What are they grateful for? It's going to be more challenging because this year has been horrible for so many people in so many ways. But when we can grab onto anything real, anything that we're grateful for, it just kind of lifts the energy and it helps. So you might want to be able to change those things around. I want to make sure that Xander is here. Xander, are you here? And just not, oh no, where did he go? Okay. One of the things I've been thinking about, I was going to have him talk about a little bit, because he's my technical whiz kid, is, and I'm not technical at all, so, is to be able to look at technology and see whether there's any way you can include other people through a laptop. Whether you might be able to open a Zoom room, or, you know, if Zoom is overloaded, it might be Skype or it might be FaceTime, and you can open a room where other people can sign into that room, and you know, maybe you've got one laptop at one end of the table and you've got another laptop at another end of the table, and you're able to include some people that you're not able to have there this year. So I'm thinking that there might be some ways that can get worked out. So, I think that's really all that I need to say for now. I think a lot of things will probably get reopened when we ask some questions. So I'm wondering if we want to do that. And again, I need Xander for that. I don't know where he is.
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I just took myself off video.
Oh, okay. Well, you were going to maybe talk for a couple of minutes about the possibility of doing some technical stuff, like having people in a Zoom room on computers at the dinner table, so that people could be included from different places. We talked about that.
Yes, we did. So, from a technical standpoint, for anybody who has someone or someones who are part of your, what we refer to as your circle of love, the people that you care for deeply and that you'd love to spend time with. But because you're being cautious around COVID, you are choosing to not go and visit them or have them visit you. And it's possible with Zoom, similar to as we're doing right now, to have people at the dinner table by having a Zoom room like this, where you Zoom meeting. Now, Zoom offers a free account so that you don't have to pay anything to sign up for Zoom. And so if you have any questions about how to do this, then please do feel free to email us care-team@lovewithboundaries.com. That's the same email that I'm going to be sending you the replay link for this webinar and Q&A session. And everyone who signed up for this will receive that replay link.
It's in the chat too. Tracy just put it in the chat. Thank you, Tracy.
She put in the email address, yes. So, and we have one person who has to drop off because they have another commitment. And then we have a couple of questions that are ready for you, Candace.
Okay, shoot.
I'm wondering if Pat wants to address her question directly to Candace, or would you prefer that I I see that you've unmuted yourself, Pat. Would you care to address your comments to Candace live, or would you care for me to do that?
Don't mind doing it myself. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, Pat.
And
Hi.
Just before you guys connect, anybody else who has a question, please go to the chat and you'll raise your hand by saying, I have a question, and I will call on you when it's your turn. Okay? So there you go, Pat and Candace.
Hey, Pat. Uh-oh.
Pat, go ahead, please, and ask your question of Candace.
All right. Is my connection working for you?
It is now.
Yeah.
Hello?
Oh, Pat, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but maybe my connection's not working so well.
Okay, well, let's see whether we can do it. You know, those two great Zoom questions. Can you hear me? And are you wearing pants? Right? Those are the two Zoom questions. So I can hear you. And if you do drop off, then Xander can just read me your question. Okay? So you can talk to me.
Okay.
Talk to me.
So, right. My question is that I really appreciated the sandwich strategy that you mentioned. So thank you very much. But what I find when I do try and set boundaries is that I don't get, a violent reaction, but I do get criticized for being judgmental, appropriately bringing up a topic like that when I try and say that I don't want use to happen in the shared space.
Yep.
And so I don't know how to deal with that kind of a strategy. Okay.
That's such a good question. The important thing to remember, and I can tell you this in memory of my own days of addiction, that what addicts are trying to do is deflect the attention off of them and onto the other person. They don't want you naming what's true for them. They don't want any reminders of the fact that they know somewhere deep inside that their lives are a mess and they keep shooting themselves in the foot. So what they do is they turn it around and blame you. And that's called, that that is so common that it has a name. It's called gaslighting. And if you haven't heard of gaslighting, you might want to look it up on the internet. There's lots of definitions for it. But basically, it's when somebody gets some feedback, doesn't like it, and blames the person giving the feedback. So setting boundaries is, I see it as a 3-part process. First of all, you have to know what your boundary is. You have to identify it and know what it is. Because if you and I were in exactly the same position, I might have a different boundary than you. And that's okay, because we're different people. So we need to each know what our boundaries are. And then we need to know how to language our boundary so that the addict can hear it, so that the addict will hear it. There needs to be a certain kind of assertiveness that happens when we set a boundary, a certain kind of self-respect of, this is not negotiable, and I'm not going to, I'm not going to be listening to you gaslight me. So it's that kind of feeling. And then the third part is about maintaining that boundary even when the addict keeps poking at you, because the addict will poke at you to see whether you'll cave, because you've probably caved before. So they think you're going to cave again. And it's almost an addict's job, if you will, to keep poking at you till you cave. So you need to learn how to maintain the boundary even when it's difficult. So you need to know what the boundary is, how to language it, and how to maintain it. Don't set a boundary if you're not going to maintain it, because then the addict just knows that if he keeps poking at you, you'll cave. This is something that you might want to reach out for help with if you don't know how to do this or you don't have a lot of experience doing it. It's very easy to learn how, and then we can help you look at, okay, well, if the addict responds this way to you, what do you do? If they respond this way to you, what do you do? So you have support and you have problem solving going on. My suggestion to you would be to reach out before you set the boundary, get some help with it, and know that gaslighting is, what addicts do. But that doesn't mean that you have to put up with it. And as soon as you start to respect yourself enough to not put up with that, the ripple effect is that the addicts stop doing it. It's amazing how that works. What do you think about all that, Pat?
I think I hear what you're saying, and I think you're right that I probably have caved in the past.
Yep.
And I need to learn to not do that.
Yeah. But it's not a question of, okay, I'm going to learn how to not do that, because it's hard. It's difficult, right? So it's something that you can get some help with, learn how to do, practice, get better at, and feel really good about yourself.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your question.
Okay, so then we have a question for you, Candace, from Nee, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Oh, hi, Nee.
Hi, Candace.
Is that how to pronounce your name, Nee?
Yes, that is right. I am really glad to be here. I found you last year, and I do a support group for family members here in Kansas City dealing with how to cope. But the holidays is a really tricky time, so I'm really glad to be here. But I love your video about enabling an addict. So this question is kind of specific with that in regards to support within the family. So I have families who, they have a spouse or a partner or a child, but they may have good boundaries, or they may want to maintain and practice good boundaries, but they don't have the support of their family members, or their family members may not have as a firm boundary. So it just makes it really difficult. And I can't imagine how difficult it is now with the holidays, especially having someone live with you. So what would you recommend for them to do? Sometimes I just feel like lost for words, because it's hard. Seeing somebody day in, day out, and then having the holidays, but not having that support.
Yeah, it's so hard when families are not united on the same page, and you've got some family members trying to learn how to actually help instead of enable, and you've got some family members continuing to enable. That's a really difficult situation. Silly me, I forgot to bring a copy of my book over here where I am. Xander or Tracy, do you happen to have a copy of my book that's close by that you could just reach for at all? Because I wrote a book called Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. There it is. Thank you, Xander. The top 10 survival tips for loving someone with an addiction. And if you want to email me, I would be happy to send you the PDF, the link for the PDF version of that book. That's all about how to do this and why it needs to be done. It's funny, I want to look in the camera, but I also feel like I want to look down at your face because it's so beautiful. I can send you the PDF link, and then you can send it to your clients whose family members are still enabling. They can send it to those family members. So it'll be free for everybody. Nobody has to pay for it. And they can read about what happens when you keep enabling an addict, because the bottom line is, here's the deal: an enabled addict does not recover. Because why should they? Everybody's going to do everything for them. Why should they? If you love an addict, I'm probably preaching to the converted, but it's okay for me to just say this. If you love an addict, the best thing you can do for that addict is to stop enabling them and start learning what real help is instead. That's what will get them to a place where they think, oh, I'm not sure I like this anymore. Maybe I'm going to stop using. Otherwise, why should they stop? You're going to buy the food, you're going to pay the rent, you're going to make the meals, you're going to do the laundry, you're going to argue for their limitations. Oh, he can't do it for himself, so I'll do it for him. How does that help anything? So this book explains how to stop the enabling process and why it's important to do that. And there are case studies in the book, and different ways that they can learn. So to me, that would be the best thing for family members to read that book and to understand that if they keep doing what they're doing, if nothing changes, nothing changes except for one thing. What changes is that the addiction gets worse, because addiction doesn't get better without help.
Yeah, definitely progressive. And we talk about how, like Melody, Betty, loving a loved one to death is really how that behavior is. It's just so detrimental. But yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. And sometimes what happens is that somebody does die and the family thinks, oh my God, could we have done something different? Yes, you can do something different. You can do it now before your addict dies. So I get a little when I talk about this, because it's so important and it's so changeable. So does that help your question?
Absolutely. So I actually have that PDF file because you had sent it to me before.
Okay.
Just read it, but I read your newsletters and on Sundays and things like that when you send. So, but if you have time for another question really quick, how do you deal with guilt? How do families deal with guilt during the holidays? Like you say, this kind of false, joyous, wonderful time, and then that guilt. I think that's really what tears people apart. I mean, personally for myself too.
Can you give me an example of the guilt that you might feel or you think somebody else might feel?
An example I'm thinking of is a mother who has two adult sons, and one's in recovery and one's not in recovery, but just decide to invite the individual that's in recovery to the holidays and not invite the individual who's in active addiction. So she's stuck with a lot of guilt. And she wants both to be there. She wants to let them to know that she loves both of them, but she just kind of have to make that hard decision, is to invite one who's in a better place now versus so that guilt there.
So depending on where the addict is in his addiction, it is possible for it's possibly possible for the mom to talk to the addict and say, I'd like to give you a choice. Because the way we look at addiction, this is an important piece in case some of you don't know this, the way we look at addiction is that that addiction is basically a choice about whether to use or not use. There are schools of thought, of course, that talk about addiction as a disease. They talk about it as a brain disease. The thing is that I already have a disease. I can't get rid of this disease. I can't, you can't just with diabetes or cancer or, you can't just say to yourself, you can get rid of it, but you can't just say to yourself, I'm just not going to have this anymore. I'm done. There are things you absolutely have to do, go through treatments and take medication and all this kind of stuff. With addiction, a person actually can say, I'm done, and walk away from it. Now, it isn't always that easy, but it is that simple. And even though I don't see it as a brain disease, I know that there's brain involvement in addiction, but there's brain involvement in everything we do, including what I'm doing now. Moving my finger requires brain involvement. We're wired that way. So there's always going to be brain involvement in everything we do. But that doesn't mean that we have to do it. Even if we grow up in a household where there's addiction, that doesn't mean we have to choose that. And so she can say to her son, using maybe the sandwich technique, I would love to have you at my table. I love you very much. Your brother's going to be coming. We'd love to have you there. This is what would have to happen for you to be there. I'd like to give you the choice. Why don't you think about it and get back to me and let me know whether you think that you can maintain the expectations that I'm putting out. You don't have to stay for a really long time. You can just, we expect you to come, be clean and sober when you get there, have a nice meal with us. You can leave after that if you want to. We'd love to have you there. And if you don't think you can do it, we understand that too, and we still love you. But you can't come if you're not going to be clean and sober. Because we love you so much that we are not going to participate in having you with us using your addiction. We don't want to support that anymore. And that's because we love you.
Okay. Yeah, I really like the sandwich technique.
Yeah. And I think giving the addict the choice, she doesn't have to feel guilty if she gives the addict the choice.
Yeah, and I think sometimes giving them that choice kind of release that kind of control that we want to control the situation. So that's kind of like their decision versus we making that decision for them and then feeling tired and responsible for the consequences of the outcomes. And
that's right.
Definitely easier said than done, though,
Sorry, say it again.
Definitely easier said than done sometimes.
Easier said than done, but doable. It's doable, and if you want to have them watch this part of you're going to get the replay. If you want to play it for your client, I'd be happy with that, Yeah, it's really important for loved ones to understand that when they stop enabling, they're doing the very best thing for their addict. And that takes away a lot of the guilt. But they need to be able to not just understand it here, but be able to trickle it down. And reading my book, I think, would help that a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Candace.
Okay.
Okay, so we have, I see that Pat has you've raised your hand, and I'm going to get to you right after this next question that I'm going to read aloud because I've been asked to read it to Candace. Candace, the next question is from a widowed mom of an adult son.
Yep.
The son has significant mental health and addiction issues and is incapable of independent living. Mom has arranged to go away for a week during Christmas. Her son, who's been living on her property with access to her house, did well until he recently started drinking again. He became verbally abusive and unpleasant to be around.
Right.
So she had arranged for one of her friends to look in on and help her son while mom is away. But now mom is feeling uncomfortable with possibly exposing her friend to the potential for abuse if her son drinks while she is away.
Yeah.
So she wants to ask, what kind of alternative plans can you suggest for her so that she can have a good holiday?
Mm. Yeah, that's a dicey one on a number of levels. I appreciate the question. And I can well imagine how difficult a situation that would be. So I'm going to say something that you might not like to hear, but I'm going to say it anyway, because that's what I do. Maybe reconsider your plans for going away at Christmas, depending on what's happening with COVID at Christmas. Like maybe keep an eye on that and maybe not go away. So that's one thing. Maybe go next year, or in February, or, another time. In terms of your son, again, if your son isn't able to behave himself, it says incapable. You're saying incapable. If he truly is incapable, I mean, I understand about mental health issues, and some people with mental health issues don't want to take their medication, and because it makes them feel terrible, and it's a real problem. But in terms of what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, if he's not going to behave himself, and he's going to be a problem, and he's going to keep drinking, then he can't have access to your house. This is your house. He's not allowed to have access to your house. Maybe what your neighbor can do is keep an eye on your house, and if she sees your son at your house, she calls the police. Maybe you can call a hospital and talk to a mental health team and get some suggestions or advice from them too about this. Maybe they'll have something different to say than I will, but it's your house. And, for you to even be put in this position by somebody who could be taking medication, who could be behaving differently, who was, it sounds like, doing that for a while and then made a decision to start drinking again, for that to become your problem is not a good thing, right? Just in general, it's just not a good thing. So my hope for you is that you'll think about the fact that, number one, think about whether you want to actually go away at this time. But number two, if you do decide to go, then maybe talk to the police non-emergency line, explain your situation to them, talk to the mental health unit at a hospital or a clinic, get some ideas from them. Maybe have your neighbor watch the house but not have to interact with your son, because that might be putting her or him in some jeopardy, depending on whether your son can be violent. So I think those are the things that I would have you consider. But the most important thing to me is the self-respect of, this is my home and this is not negotiable. You do not get access to my home if you're drinking and behaving like this. It's not going to happen. To me, that's the most loving thing you can do for your addict, and definitely the most respectful thing you can do for yourself. And reach out for help to do it if you need to. If you have a counselor that you're working with, discuss that with your counselor. Get some support and get some ideas from people about how to deal with this, because that's not an easy situation.
Thank you, Candace. So, is there anyone else who would like to ask Candace a direct question? If so, can you unmute yourself? Ah, there's Kat. So Kat, please, yeah, great. You've unmuted yourself and go ahead.
Hi, Kat.
Hello. I'm really grateful to be here.
Great. Where are you from?
I'm from Melbourne in Australia.
Are you in Australia right now?
Yeah, and it's 12:30 in the after. Oh, 12:30. Yeah.
In the
lunchtime.
afternoon or at night? In the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, welcome.
Thank
I love
you.
your accent. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question in regards to a friend who I treat like family. I'm not very close to my family. I'm almost estranged from them, actually. But I have this friend, and I'm particularly sensitive around this time of year, being Christmas, because I am quite isolated and I do suffer from a lot of loneliness. And I want this person around me for Christmas, but I've noticed that she is coming in and out of my life. And whenever I'm vulnerable or having a difficult time, such as now, I don't hear from her. And there's a history in the friendship of that happening quite a bit. And the last time we had a discussion about the friendship, I did mention that I felt quite sad about the fact that she's not here for me when she needs me. And she apologised and said that she feels really bad about it. However, we're back to square one. I want this person around for Christmas, and I want this person in my home when I need her or when I need to reach out. But she seems to have done a runner on me again.
Yeah.
I'm getting really frustrated.
Yeah.
And I really need to deal with this because it's really bothering me. So I don't know where to start. So yeah.
Okay. It's a great thing to raise. There are so many people, I've certainly been there myself, sometimes continue to be, that have friendships that don't feel like they're meeting our needs. That's certainly not unusual at all. Is this person addicted to something?
Yeah.
What is she addicted to?
Alcoholic.
She's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Okay. So, there's something that I like to talk about with my clients that I work with, and sometimes I even ask myself this question. I talk about the payoffs and the price tags. So you've kind of explained really well what the payoffs are for you.
Yep.
You're talking about it. Oh, somebody needs to mute themselves. Thank you. You're talking about how you feel lonely around, especially around this time of year, I'm thinking, and it's so easy when you're bombarded with happy families everywhere. It's easy for you to feel that way. And feeling like having this person there would be better for you than not having this person there. So that's a payoff for you, or it feels like it's a payoff for you. And you've been able to explain how you feel, and the fact that you're kind of there for her, but she's not really able to be there for you. That's so frustrating in a friendship, and it just makes us feel lonelier, I think, sometimes. And it seemed like she was getting it, and now she's doing the same thing again. So you have to wonder, does she get it? So the payoff, it seems to me, at least one of them, is for you to be able to have somebody there for you. Or let's put it this way, it's to have somebody there with you. It may not be somebody there for you.
Yep.
But somebody there with you, right?
Yep.
So then we get to the price tag. And the price tag is about, what does it cost you to have somebody that you can't get your needs met with, that actually makes you feel worse, what's kind of the payoff for you? What's the price tag? What's the price you're paying to have that in your life? So these are things that you're going to need to explore. I don't know, how's COVID doing in your neck of the woods?
We're in Melbourne. We're still wearing masks, and that's the only restriction we have at the moment.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking is, I'm not even sure what's going to happen here about this, but you know, for the homeless, there are usually dinners, there are usually volunteer experiences, and sometimes when we're feeling really alone, when we're feeling down, to be able to get out there and help somebody else feel better can really help. So I know I've done that in the past with Christmases, as I've volunteered to serve dinner to people, or I've volunteered to do other things because I don't have family. My family's gone, basically. And, you know, it's just a really nice thing to be able to do. It makes you feel better. You meet other people who like to do that kind of thing too, and you meet like-minded people, and maybe you make some new friends, and right. So I'm just putting that out as a possible suggestion of a different way you could do it this year.
I like the sound of that, Candace. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is for Christmas, right?
Yeah, for Christmas. Yeah.
So you've got, like, this is a really good time to be looking for those opportunities, because you've got another month or 6 weeks before that's going to happen. And people, you know, places are looking for people. They need people to go and help out. Yeah. You're always kind of welcomed with open arms when you go to help somebody else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds wonderful. I'd love to do something like that. And I'm sure I could quite easily in Melbourne.
Yeah, actually. Yeah. So maybe today you can give yourself the gift of looking on the internet and seeing what's there. Make some phone calls, write some emails, tell them you're here, I'm here, I want to help. What can I do?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. That sounds lovely. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. That helps?
It does help. And in terms of the friendship, I suppose I guess, a bit obsessed about it. I do overthink things, and tend to get angry when I feel like my needs aren't being met. Yeah. And I either want to yell at the person or block them. Yeah. So, and I know neither one of those is helpful. So I just don't know what to do in terms of that thinking and letting that go, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, what comes to my mind is that there may be some issues from your past. There may be issues from other relationships, or maybe even childhood, that are contributing to this. Just some things that need to be healed. Just some things that need to be talked about and need to be healed, so that you can feel better and stronger inside of yourself, and you're not attracting those people who can't meet your needs. Because not getting your needs met sounds a little bit like something that's been going on for a while.
Yes, that's right.
So if you heal that piece, if you work with a therapist or something, and you heal that piece, and then you strengthen yourself up, you're not going to need to be in those relationships anymore. In fact, they're going to start to bore you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, I'm talking from somebody who kind of knows personally, not just professionally, but personally as well. And the obsessing that you're doing, I'll just say, it isn't going to change anything. It's not going to make her better. It's not going to make her different. It's not going to make her meet your needs. You know what I mean? So the person that's hurting, the more you do that, the person that's hurting is you. And I invite you not to hurt yourself. I invite you to heal yourself instead of hurt yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Candace. I am working on it. I do see a therapist, and I'm in some 12-step programs as well. So I'm working on it.
Fantastic. fantastic. Please keep going and doing that. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you for being on this call and asking
no,
your
no.
question.
So grateful to be here. You know, I can say it over and over again. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Chances are she's not going to change much unless she decides to stop drinking. It's just going to be same old, because these are her issues that she's dealing with, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's the other thing, you know, when she doesn't meet your needs, this is so important. If she was my friend, she wouldn't be meeting my needs either.
Yep.
So for you to take it personally in any kind of way and think badly about yourself because she doesn't meet your needs, you don't need to do that to yourself. This isn't about you. It feels like it affects you and it feels like it's about you, but it isn't really about you. It's about her. So you want to find some other people who don't do life that way, who don't do friendships that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand. Thank you so much for that. Beautiful.
Yeah, okay, good.
So we
Lovely
have what looks like the final question, unless there's anybody else who wants to ask Candace a question. And just before I do that, because we have some people who are leaving or need to leave, and this is for you, Kat, and anybody else who would like to possibly take advantage of our services. We're a team of 6 counselors and therapists who are all trained in Candace's technique, protocol, ideas, and we also come with master's degrees in counseling psychology or extensive experience in addiction. And so if you're interested in that, I'll be sharing with you in the email that I send out to everyone with the audio replay of this call. I'll be sharing with you a link to our questionnaire. And if you fill out our questionnaire, it will entitle you to, and of course return it to us, then you'll be entitled to a half an hour to 40 minutes, free, no obligation, Zoom or phone call, where I'll meet with you and we'll discuss ways in which we might be able to help you with any of the issues of living with and loving an addict. Yeah, or just having an addict in your life that you love.
Yeah.
Great. So,
Yeah.
Candace, was there something you wanted to add to that?
No, all you have to do is fill out a questionnaire and you get a free 30-minute telephone call or a Zoom call. I think it's a great system.
Yep. So
and you can be anywhere in the world.
Yep.
So there. Okay.
Thank you for your thumbs up. So the final question, what if it's not a son or daughter who is the addict? What if it's a parent or spouse where they own the house and you're not a guest?
Yeah.
It's you just say you're a guest here.
Yep. I was kind of hoping nobody'd ask me that, because it's a hard one to answer. No, I'm really glad whoever has asked it has asked it. It's a hard one to answer because when the addict or the alcoholic, it's often an alcoholic, can be functional and be out in the world making a living and paying for the house, and they own the house, and you know, you're saying to them, but we don't really have a relationship because you're not really present with me because you're always drinking or using drugs, you're you know, and I don't like it. And they say, tough, too bad. Sometimes, again, we need to look at the payoffs and the price tags. And this is a really hard one because, you know, especially if it's a marriage or a partnership like that, leaving somebody like that is really, really difficult. Staying with somebody like that is really, really difficult. for me, it boils down to that self-respect piece again, which is what I'm going to be talking more about next week. So please feel free to come to the next webinar as well. But it really is about self-respect. And when we look at self-respect, we find out where our leverage is in this relationship. And that's what needs to happen, is you need to find out where your leverage is, so that the person who owns the house isn't steamrolling you and basically saying to you, I don't want to hear this from you, shut up. So what if I drink? So if it's a parent, I don't have too many situations like that where it's the parents that are addicted. If you're an adult child with parents who are addicted, again, you can set boundaries. You've got some leverage. You can say to your parents, I'm not going to be here with you when you're drinking or using. So you can let me know when you're not high or drunk and we can get together. But I'm not doing this with you. I'm not playing this one with you anymore. Not negotiable. If you're going to drink, you do that on your own time, in your own place. You let me know when you're not drinking. We'll see what we can do. It's hard, but again, the price tag for staying in a relationship with somebody when they're drinking, when they're using, it's a pretty high price tag. So you need to look at what you're willing to put up with. Dr. Phil, most of you know Dr. Phil. I don't know if Dr. Phil's in Australia, but I mean, I'm not a huge Dr. Phil fan, but every once in a while he says something useful. And what he says is, we teach other people how to treat us. And we do. So if we want to be treated differently, we need to teach them that what they've been doing is no longer acceptable for us. They'll either change or they won't. You don't have control over another human being. Ouch, I'll say that again. You don't have control over another human being. You only have control over yourself and your own choices. I wish it was different. If I ruled the world, we'd be able to control each other. Maybe not. So that's kind of the best answer I can give you. Again, you might want to talk to somebody about that, because you do have leverage, you just don't know it. It's not okay for you to put up with this kind of behavior.
Awesome answer. Thank you, Candace. And at this point, I think that's the end of the questions that people have put in the chat. And we've been here for almost an hour and a half.
Is there anybody else going once, going twice?
So thank you all for attending.
Okay.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your attention. And we do look forward to having you register and come to our next webinar and Q&A, which is the same time. You have to register. It'll be a different link that you'll join by. So please reach out to us, careteam@lovewithboundaries.com. If you have any problems in registering for that. Then we have another webinar a week after that, and another one a week after that. The first one is going to be on enabling, and the second one, the third one is going to be on enabling, and the fourth one is going to be on Candace's NOPE.
N-O-P-E, nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay. We look forward.
And thank you to those of you who have put comments in the chat. And if you have other comments and you would like to email us, you have the email address. If you have some comments or suggestions or anything about the webinar that you've just been on.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.